The following pages consists of a story back in the dark ages of a great creature who shall remain nameless. Always was tameless, terrible greatness. The havoc was ageless for warfare. The monster was gracious, so gracefully roaming the skies and land. Nothing existed known to man that could even withstand to this beast. When he wanted a feast, it was simple, but the king of the land wouldn't understand. Therefore what led to this plan. First, let me tell you about the king, covered in fur and jewels, from the crown to his rings, smothered in gold and minuscule gems surrounding him and everything. Up in his castle, even the scepter would dazzle. His prized possession was waiting for all of his battles, and it was only with lather in his riches. They considered the latter, never a thought to reconsider what actually mattered. So now we find the king in the drunken scene, gathered by servants, soldiers, and his queen. The kingdom's people could be seen through the castle, those relentless, just to get more of a view into the main hall. But the entrance was blocked off by barricades, soldiers and all received orders from the king to let no one enter at all. For all of the king's celebrations, this was protocol. Then amongst the crowd, a strange and erratic man made his way down where he found himself being stopped by the king's guards at the blockage. And since he had information that may have been to the king's concern to the guards, it was absurd. They were highly unconcerned with the lad to pushing the man away. While walking away, he quickly turned and managed to make his way through, while almost reaching the king too, just to come to being put down on his knees by the king guard, talking quite a few. The beating to come soon. The king was not amused. He asked, "Who are you? I've never seen you, and even so, you have the audacity." A joke this has to be suddenly even defeated. The man speaks of dragon slayers. I've heard you speak. Figured you wanted to seek the dragon with eyes as bright as the sun for your greatest feat, while his wings as dark as the night sky. Truly something unseen. The blue and black pattern on the skin. Came across it, I did. The details triggered the king, but asked if it never did. He orders his lieutenant to ready the troops, for we are to follow him to the monster that we're after, led by the man in the journey. And it seemed like the king was the only one keeping the secret. The following events happened as sequenced upon arrival to the dragon's hill. The field was filled with crushed skulls and broken bones. Whether they belonged to beast or human was unable to be known. Out of nowhere a mist arose, filling the air. The king scepter telepathically let him know he was there. The man pointed ahead and said that the massive cave was a dragon's lair. As they got to the opening, that's when they started noticing that the entrance was blocked by rocks. It was slightly off from the bottom all the way to the top. The king ordered to load up the cannon and let off a shot, expecting the rocks to drop just to be frozen and shot. All of them stopped as the dragon led off one of the greatest wars in what we thought were rocks. Slithered his way out and got a hold of one of the king's men, pulled into the cave by the dragon's tail for a split second while there was only silence. Well, the king looked around for the man who was nowhere in sight, but then abruptly turned it back to truly witness the sight. The dragon burst through the cave with all its might. Chunks of rocks and debris showered the army left to right, followed by savagery. The dragon charged at them angrily, truly a sight to see. The dragon devouring, the blood empowering. The army charged at the dragon and numbers as they yelled out for our king. They were loyal, not knowing the king himself was shook and cowering, cowardly. The dragon slayer ran from the encountering into the forest, while leaving his army to fend for themselves. He sent them to hell. He was shaking, talking to himself, questioning his valor. The king having flashbacks, fear and anxiety, psychological symptoms of PTSD coming out of it for a second. Once coming across an old tree that seemed to be out of place. A nanosecond later, an hour appeared at a rapid pace, having bright blue eyes that gazed upon the king's face. They were lost in the daze, but nothing could brace the king for what he was asking to face. The owl flew down to the ground, a transformation. that would truly astound. The owl transformed to an old man with a gray beard and nearly reached the ground, and the fabric surrounding him had never been seen, not even by past kings. But what he felt the most out of all things was a mystic presence, so omnipresent. He acknowledged the king with these questions: everything okay? Are you lost? The king replies, who are you? What are you? Only for the wizards to laugh it off. Aren't you the greatest dragon slayer of them all? And yeah, here you are. Why your army fall? Are you still feeling tall? What would your people think of you if they saw the king was frozen as a wizard, lay troops and all? Isn't this the second time you faced this beast? You were left to scar the king in shock ass. How did you know my secret? I know it all and see it all. I live millions of lifetimes before your reign, and will live millions more after your fall. The king agitated said, just point me in the direction to my castle. I have no time for lies and illusions. The wizard with a wicked grin pointed into the side. He moved in after a couple steps. The wizard as I have the power to help, just for him to stop and then proceed with no hesitation. After walking for a duration that seemed to be forever, it got colder and darker. Every time it seemed he got closer, he kept looking over his shoulders as he noticed a fog emerging, followed by wicked sounds dispersing, appearing so sudden. A pair of blue eyes lay hidden within the shadows. The king, terrified, draws his sword ready to battle. This mysterious animal had no shape or form. The king shaky with his sword and sloppy with his form. And now, as he stands before the animal, charged at him, showing rows of teeth, while the king, steady his feet, almost prayed to the gods to help defeat. It comes at him on all fours, with more of a screech than a roar. Right before the animal cannibal managed to get a hold of the king at a dinner, the wizard appeared, throwing the king off guard. The animal he locked on to a new target, changed directions towards the wizard. With a swift movement of his hands, the wizard vanished. The animal throws the king in the frantic, but wanting to know where did it go? How could it be so? The wizard answers, it no longer exists. How can you defeat the dragon if you tremble to this? The king in desperation asks the dragon itself be put in the same position on one condition. The king then offers wealth, women, and land, just for the wizard to respond that there's nothing to me that has no value to me, nor does your castle or army. The king angrily asks, well, what do you want from me? I am the scepter. He says that at this point nothing to hold the king back. With slight hesitation, handing it over to the wizard as he responds, consider it done. That's when the real war begun. The pair walked up to the dragon's hill. Before reaching the cave, the wizard tells the king to stay here. You don't wanna be near the showdown. Whoa now, the king replies, I need to watch his demise and make sure you don't defy, as if he was so dignified. Sensing the presence once again, the dragon let itself be known, releasing a great roar before coming out in rage, wanting more. This time a little cautious, and it shows sensing the wizard's power, allowing the wizard to make the first move. He conjured up cosmic energy for nothing, manipulated into a force that was sent through a blast with his own hands that he would shoot at the great beast. It was unforeseen, to say the least, hitting the dragon in the face, causing him to stumble that led to the rumble. Before the land shaked and quaked and all from a near tumble, the ground under him crumbled as he got his balance back and shook it off. Pissed off, the dragon takes a huge breath and disperses blue fire, both never heard of, let alone seen by both wizard and king. Mystical warfare. What transpired? The wizard quickly produced a mystic shield with his very hands, only for it to backfire, lacking the power required, only for the dragon's flame to rip through, burning his hands, flesh burning, something he'd never been through. At this moment he knew it wouldn't be killed with ease, having never been tested before, but with light speed teleported the streams of fire while nearly messing with all the commotion, the king still looked from afar, staring motionless, watching warfare at his best, but on the mystic level. The king mesmerized, reached down off to his side, just to remind him that the scepter now belonged to the wizard. For a minute his mind was occupied, yeah, that the wizard quit wasting time, quit playing games with it, make it vanish. With the king's bickering, he managed to be a distraction to the wizard while interacting with the dragon, who was able to figure out his flight pattern and then reacted at full speed. Catching the wizard in mid-flight, he would smite him down with his claws penetrated in his shoulder blades, and all it was pinned down with all of the dragon's might. All while the king now on sight, no longer in fright, but eager to fight, wanting to fulfill his birthright. So his sword is drawn and gripped tight, anticipating the moment to be right. Despite seeing the great dragon's elevator was the wizard just moments before going in for the fight. The king, having the dragon in his line of sight, attempt to strike just for him to fail miserably. The dragon saw him coming with his claws, slashes him viciously and maliciously, allowing the wizard mobility to disappear from the dragon's grip, causing the dragon to charge at the king vindictively. Even with the king's vulnerability, sealing his own damnation. But before reaching him, attracted by the cantation, the wizard started speaking. Truly an ancient seeker, decided no use in the mortal, moved toward the wizard to deliver a fatal blow. Only inches before reaching the wizard, he disappeared through a portal. In conclusion, so there's no confusion, we find the king back in his castle, gathered in the reunion of his people. He spoke of his contribution to killing the great dragon while showing his battle scar, but deep inside, knowing he wrong, claiming to kill the last of his kind, knowing deep inside some changing them during that time, and now forever living the lifelong lie as the greatest dragon slayer alive. The wizard could be found far away from the kingdom, still bringing in treasures, basking in greed, although still a painful reminder to see his scorched hands holding on to the scepter, still in possession, even with no fear because of bad receptor, living a lie within the lie that he created, and wondering if it was worth it after what the dragon demonstrated. Still knowing what he orchestrated, he anticipated a future confrontation with the dragon once more to account for the acts that started the war. The dragon was sent ages into the future through a wormhole. Furthermore, his body broke down into particles, causing the refusing to perish, only to live on and cling on to a new wholesome body. Once arriving in the year 1988, predestined to wield the dragon's power, not knowing the day or hour, awaiting to face off with the wizard once more, his enemy forevermore. Reincarnation.